Welcome back to the Howell Business Beat. I'm Janelle Best, one of the day's co-host, show's co-host. I also have with me my co-host, Dianne Samples.
Hello, everyone.
All right, and we are happy to be joined today by Marcia Gebarowski, and Marcia is here to talk about economic development. So welcome, Marcia.
Thanks for having me, Janelle and Dianne.
Absolutely. So, Marcia, I want to just let you open up by sharing a little bit about yourself,
Right.
And what you do, because I know it is it's pretty much economic development.
Economic development, yep.
And a lot of different things around that too. But what is the role you play, and kind of how did you get to where you're at today?
Sure. So I'm the Director of Business Development for Ann Arbor SPARK in Livingston County. Ann Arbor SPARK is the economic development organization that covers Washtenaw and Livingston counties. And in Livingston County, we have a separate nonprofit organization called the Economic Development Council of Livingston County, or the EDC-LC. And SPARK is essentially contract staff to that organization. So they reached out to SPARK about in 2011 when their executive director retired. And instead of having a local full-time person, the board here in Livingston County at the time really wanted to leverage regional resources. And so looked to have that partnership with Ann Arbor SPARK. A lot of the programs that SPARK has in Washtenaw County, Ann Arbor and Ypsi, they felt that could be really relevant and I think bring Livingston's ability to support businesses to a next level. So we have had a presence working with the EDC since 2012. I've been in this role for 6 years. My predecessor, who is now our Vice President of Business Development for Ann Arbor SPARK, Phil Santer, recruited me. He and I both worked at the state Economic Development Agency, or the MEDC, for a number of years. So I have 20 plus years of local, state, and now I think countywide economic development experience. And economic development can mean a number of things. But what we do in Livingston, what we really do focus on is the support, the retention, and growth of our existing businesses, as well as working with communities that can support business attraction. So when we do have opportunities to work with our state and regional partners on business attraction, or with our own businesses that are looking to grow, or maybe bring new divisions into Livingston County, that we can be a support there.
Awesome. So, what did you do? I want to take it back a little bit. What did you do at the MEDC, and how were you able to kind of leverage the skill set that you built there for Ann Arbor SPARK?
So at the MEDC, there's a lot of different components and I think many silos of economic development. So I worked with a lot of the incentive programs that the state has to offer businesses. So I became a subject matter expert of a lot of the incentive programs, a lot of the pieces of legislation that allow for tools for incentives that communities can use for businesses, as well as just, I think, learning the different industries across the state. So whether that was the different industries like medical on the west side of the state, certainly automotive, R&D, and how like the little industry sectors look and are supported in different parts of the state, which really helped because Ann Arbor SPARK, in Ann Arbor, downtown Ann Arbor, we have what's called the Smart Zone. So we are able to support incubator space and really have a honed-in focus on entrepreneurial development. And then we specialize in the tech industry. So, I mean, we've supported tens and probably hundreds of tech companies over the years that have, stayed in Ann Arbor or grown, or, we've seen flourish. And we even had about 5 years ago, Dual Security was, a company that we supported, and they became our first unicorn. So $1 billion company.
Wow.
So we get to see things like that. So there is that specialized tech industry. It's kind of that tech bubble in Washtenaw County that we support.
So when you say support, what does that involve?
I think the incubator space, just the environment to start in. And so when you have an incubator space, you're also providing those wraparound services. So it's the mentoring, it's the challenges. when we were doing the testing of Survivor. It's kind of like those we do pitch challenges. So we kind of make them flex their muscles as they start to grow in their own.
So kind of the nitty gritty that they might not be thinking of right away. Like
yes.
These are things you really need to hone in on. You have to have a good grasp on them before you can move forward.
And so we have our entrepreneurial services team is our second biggest team at Ann Arbor SPARK. And so they really are dedicated to focusing on supporting the entrepreneurial growth. And predominantly those are tech businesses. And then we also have a small group. And so we support venture capital. And so the Michigan Venture Fund is something that we oversee. And so a lot of times the state says, we're not going to do our own program. We're just going to give funds to maybe one of our regional economic development partners like Ann Arbor SPARK to run statewide programs. So we do have a good handle on how we can help finance the companies as well.
How big is Ann Arbor SPARK as an organization?
I think today we're at about 28 employees.
Okay. Awesome. So you've been in Livingston County for some time, it sounds like, and we talked a little bit about economic development, and that can be many things. So we've got,
correct.
What would you say is your focus on economic development and what that means for Livingston County?
Right. So I am a lifelong resident here, and I think that was one of the attributes that I think I love doing my job so much because every county, every community has its own identity. And so what I see in Livingston, what I love supporting is we do have a lot of solopreneurs and entrepreneurs. It might not be in a big job creation industry like tech or medical or manufacturing, but we do have a big entrepreneurial spirit in Livingston. A lot of services, a lot of retail, because that's really what supports our own communities, our population. But what I do focus predominantly is we have a great business base. We have businesses that have been here multiple generations. So making sure that they're up to date on resources. The state and federal programs come and go almost annually. And then if there isn't something that's kind of supporting a business at an industry level, whether it's, helping sales diversification, or we've got a program where they can get funding for assistance to export. So like looking at international sales, we look at internally, what can we do locally? How can we partner with our schools, with our chambers of commerce, and what sorts of initiatives can we do that is really going to be focused solely on something that we see as a need in Livingston for our businesses.
Absolutely. And kind of a big picture, why is economic development important to any community? Why is this something that we should be looking at or strategically focusing on?
So the future of, I think, our communities really is part of the role of my industry. The businesses and businesses being in our communities and how our labor force looks is a big driver of how our communities are shaped. So whether that's supporting of the housing that we have or the types of businesses that can be attracted into our county. And so all of that goes hand in hand with what we do and how we can develop businesses or how we can support, again, startups or small businesses. And it might be a business in Ann Arbor, but, it's bringing in 500 new jobs, and half of them are probably going to be Livingston residents and commute into one of those new projects.
Absolutely. And, you mentioned it just previously that there are a lot of solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, smaller businesses in Livingston County, and about 70% of our chamber members are those smaller businesses. And really the kind of the backbone of our economy is the small business under 500 employees. So, and it's so the resources that you're able to provide through economic development and Ann Arbor SPARK are really detrimental to the sustainability and the success of a lot of these small businesses here. I mean, when we think about our county, it's, who wants to imagine it without certain things, right? Like without their you mentioned multi-generational businesses, and that diner that you've been going to for years, or that brewery that you now go to because it's here. So I think that it all really is amazing that it works together and it makes sense, but we're really grateful to have a focus on economic development here in Livingston County and that there is an EDC.
Yes.
So that's kind of where I was going with this. And
no, and it's all very relevant. Or, we have our larger employers where multi-generations of, family members have worked, and, they've been very, and, our larger organizations, our larger businesses are solid taxpayers in our communities, and they do support the schools, our robotics teams, our chambers, our civic events, and so they're very engaged. And that's one way, sitting down and having those conversations with businesses and making sure that they're aware of, hey, did you know this was going on in the village of Fowlerville or in the city of Howell, that they just might want to be a part of, and they usually are. So.
Even just the day-to-day support. I mean, the employees, they're shopping downtown. They're spending their money here in Livingston County. They're eating. They're, they're supporting all the businesses just by living in Livingston County, which is why, again, the housing and the transportation is so important.
Absolutely.
Hey, it's interesting. I think I'm going to quote, I don't know if I'll get this actually how it was meant to be, but I heard a quote this morning that says, if you're not planning for the future, you're planning to fail. And I think with economic development, that's so true. I mean, it's true regardless.
Right now.
Yes, absolutely.
We're seeing it right now.
We're seeing a lot of challenges that would fall kind of under that economic umbrella. And those being workforce, talent.
Yes.
I know that there were a succession. So as we have some of these multi-generational businesses, in some cases, there's not that family member to take those over. So what does that look like, and how, I guess too, as it relates to Livingston County, but how can SPARK or the EDC or even some of the chambers, how can we look at these issues and support our businesses and plan and help,
exactly
develop that roadmap?
And we're seeing it now. It's actually coming together as we speak. We are predominantly an automotive economy in Livingston County, where, predominantly our largest employers are automotive suppliers. And we are seeing that change from internal combustion engine into electric vehicle and autonomous technology. And that skill set and the whole supply chain is being turned upside down as this becomes more of a marketable, and as sales grow in the EV sector. And so we're seeing, we're planning ahead. What do the new jobs look like? I mean, we're trying to define jobs and training for jobs that don't even exist yet. And how can we get our businesses, how can we get our students in front of those opportunities? What does the retraining look like for someone at an entry-level position into one of these future skill trades? What does that look like? And how do we get people into these in-demand jobs? And you don't need a 4-year degree for all of the high-paying jobs that are going to be out there in the next 10 years. So
how do you see that? Looking, if you don't need a 4-year degree, what does that look like? Is that like certificate training? Is that like on the job training? Like apprenticeships.
It's all of the above. It's what we call stackable credentials. It's the career laddering aspect where, if you go through an apprenticeship, you're coming out with an associate's degree and work experience, and then you're able to grow from there. But if, we have employers that have their own training plans laid out, and you just take a couple of college credits, it doesn't get you an associate's, but it gets you to move up the ladder and up in pay and up in experience. So I think what you're going to see is you kind of have control of your own future and your own destiny with a lot of these future jobs.
And how do you see that evolving from the education perspective, right? And I know that
you're taking all my questions.
I'm so sorry.
I'm like trying to think.
No, and I think that's why we've got, so one of the things about in 2019, it was just before the pandemic, I looked into a resource. It was called Talent Pipeline Management. And really, it was just a tool in order to bring what we call an employer collaborative together. And so the state's really into this now of, looking at how are these employer-led collaboratives able to provide data-backed information to schools, to the state, to determine how resources can be used. And so at a local level, we have gone through the various exercises to say, these are critical jobs, here are the competencies, and then it's engaging with the schools. It's getting the schools into these collaboratives. And we do the same with, it's kind of like we've got the school-led, employer-led collaboratives, and then the employer-led collaboratives. But everybody's talking because businesses need to be the ones to say, this is what we need. And hopefully that the schools can really take that and work it into their curriculum, because that's what needs to happen.
I was just going to ask, well, I know a lot of the high schools have the co-ops and things like that, but are they going to start transforming that into apprenticeships where maybe while they're going to high school, they're actually getting that, very similar to internships, but where they're actually getting that certificate training while they're in high school. So when they come out, they're ready to enter into the workforce at those higher skilled positions.
We're seeing more of those programs, so we've got early college and do the dual enrollment. And so we are seeing more programs, of course, it's all based on how the funding works. And, employers can't support 17-year-olds or, you have to be 18 to do certain things. Exactly. So we are confined by, certain details that we can't really do too much at a high school level. But yeah, I do see that the opportunity for co-ops, early college, and then the CTE programs, I think is where we've got the biggest opportunity to see expanded, where now we've got intro to manufacturing, and maybe the next 2 or 3 years, it's intro to maintenance, machine maintenance, because that is a very in-demand skill here. But stop at the higher, umbrella intro to things, and maybe get right into the nitty gritty at the high school level.
Yeah, and I just
all that's possible.
And it is really, I love hearing that, there's things that are evolving as it relates to education, and employers are adapting, and our educational institutions are adapting and willing to work together. I mean, that's amazing. I'm just curious, and I don't know that you have the answer to this question.
I'll try.
But how, from a college perspective, what does that look like? Because I do think, we've had some really wonderful guests on this show so far, yourself included. And one of the things that keeps sticking with me is the fact that this next generation, Gen Z, is going to be having, anywhere between 8 to 12 careers in the course of their lifetime. So as you talk about those laddering credentials and, those stacking of that skill set and those transferable skills, I mean, this is where we're headed. And so how, from when you're looking at the traditional 4-year degree, how is that going to evolve? And again, I'm not sure that you have the question or the answer to that.
The flip side of that is, how are the universities adjusting to that? I mean, how are
I'd like to see that. But I can say from what I've seen is, people are still going to be lawyers. People are still going to have those professions and have that passion to where a 4-year degree is relevant. I think we're seeing is there just might be a decline in the enrollment of those 4-year degrees, and an uptick in jobs that would just need an associate's or, again, those stackable credentials. And that's not a terrible thing, in my opinion, because, our economy has been supported by the baby boomers, and as our population just is decreasing and aging, we do have to focus on those in-demand jobs. And I think we're starting to see that settle.
Well, and I think that adaptability too, because the baby boomer generation typically likes things status quo. Generally they do. So adaptability might not always be their strongest skill set. Whereas now, like we said, that's going to be huge.
It has to be,
And you have to be able to be willing to be that adaptable.
Correct.
and be coachable and trainable.
And that's, I see a lot of employers doing it really, really well, and other employers. And that's one thing I love doing, is helping employers share their best practices with others. So that it's like, this is working really well, or, hey, we do this for these bonuses, and that they're sharing information.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the benefits of having this podcast, is that we're getting information out, we're sharing that. And then, just even being a part of the chamber, we have a great best practices group that does the same thing.
Yes.
So that's really, it's really great when we have an opportunity to cultivate an environment to learn from each other, because I think that that's only going to make us all more successful. So this has been really wonderful conversation, and I know that we kind of went a little bit all over the place, but I want to get back to kind of the hyper local level for a minute, and just touch on kind of what Q1 looked like, what kind of projects Spark has in the pipeline for Livingston County or the EDC,
right.
And just touch on that quickly.
Yeah. So we do, some of my, I guess, like core goals is, supporting business growth, or, making sure that we are supporting new capital investment in Livingston County by our businesses. So my pipeline, we've got, some pretty great projects. We're supporting the Motorsports Gateway team as they continue to go through their due diligence and prepping that site.
Can you share a little bit about what the Motorsports Gateway is?
So the Motorsports Gateway is, it's going to be a private racetrack with garage condos available for purchase, and it's going to be kind of a cool thing. And then there's going to, so this is over almost 300 acres. So there's going to be an entertainment area. So, right off 96 in D19, there'll be some new added commercial retail in front of that area, and then to the back of it, there's a portion of the project that is designated for, like some R&D and auto R&D activities.
Any teasers on the retail?
No, not that I know of. Right now, they're just focused on getting that track done and starting to bring in those condos.
We are so excited to
that'll be really
see
cool
this come
to
to
have.
fruition.
That'll be cool to have in Livingston County.
And Howell.
Yes,
Howell.
absolutely, yeah.
So we've got that. We've got smaller projects, supporting. We supported a local salsa maker on obtaining a grant for some new equipment through the Department of Ag. So we have those small successes that we like to bring, but also, those planned investments. We have some companies, doing just some small expansions because they're able to. They need warehouse space, and we're welcoming some new businesses. So in Trans-West Industrial Park, a new tenant, Armalay Brands, is located. So, making sure that we're out there getting to know who they are, what their needs are, how we can connect them with the community.
You mentioned a solopreneur coming to you for some grant, some work with grants. So when would a small business say, hey, I'm at the point where I need to reach out to you, or what sort of circumstances would?
I mean, I think at any time, I'm always open for a conversation. And I think the one thing that I like doing is broadening my capabilities of making referrals. Okay. So if that's a referral to our Small Business Development Center or to another organization for help on a website, or maybe another local business that could help them organize something. So anytime, I would say, is a good time to just
that's great information to put out there, because I think a lot of business owners sometimes they have questions and they don't exactly know where can I turn. I mean, they can always call us at the chamber and we can set them up, we can connect them with people, but to kind of have that resource to be able to say, hey, I can call Spark and I can navigate. They can help me navigate through these.
So I have Nick Jablonski is on my team, and so he's my business development manager. And in the city of Brighton, I've got someone focused just in Brighton, and her name is Denise Murray. So if it's not going to be me, it'll be one of those two as well. But always happy to have a cup of coffee or just come in and see their business and talk.
Absolutely. No. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Marcia. I wanted to just touch on another thing today, and that's you shared a little bit about the structure of Livingston County and how we do economic development here through the EDC. And is that a typical model for economic development in a region, or what are some other models that you've seen that have worked really well?
Yeah, that's a really good question. In my industry, the public-private nonprofit version of an economic development organization, which is what SPARK is. There's a few other in the state, the Right Place in Grand Rapids, LEAP and our partners in Lansing are those structures. And then economic development also lives perhaps maybe within a chamber of commerce or within county government. So Oakland County, Macomb County, Wayne County, economic development lives within as a unit of the county government. So I've seen it successful in various ways. What I like and what I've always liked about the public-private nonprofit is that these boards bring private and public sectors together and they talk. And that's one thing I really didn't touch on earlier is as an economic development professional, I can kind of talk government talk on behalf of a business. So if a business is like, I don't know what's going on. What requirements is the government? Are they going to support us? Are they going to be supportive of my project? And so we can help give a lay of the land. We can help navigate through governmental process, public hearings. So we're able to get a sense when we have these meetings and when the EDC board meets, I'm hearing from our public officials, I'm hearing from our private industry. And that's really helpful. And when they're talking to each other, that's even better. So the EDC is not what I call a working board. We don't have a lot of committees. We don't do a lot of output, but it is that conversation and it's that deep dive, the input that I always seek as staff from my board members.
Awesome. Thank you. I think, I would agree. I love the partnership that the EDC has with that public and private sector, and it just gets that conversation going, which I think is really important.
We're a little unique. We don't have a niche industry. Spark in Washtenaw, it's tech. In Lansing, it is a little bit of tech, but they're also focused on medical. So we don't. I've never really said, we're going to have a focus industry. We're going to support who we have. Because the best practices that I can share regionally, and I love taking the best practices of successful businesses from Livingston to a state level, or having somebody from Livingston on a state panel, because that's, if I'm going to be able to elevate Livingston County or bring our economy and our communities to a bigger level, I like doing that through the stories. And we're doing things really well here in Livingston, but we don't have a focused industry.
Yes.
So
SPARK has an annual meeting every year. That's kind of more regional. EDC also has an annual meeting every year. Do you want to touch on those real quick too?
So SPARK, our big annual meeting is coming up May 25th. It's at the EMU Student Center. And so that'll be a really good way to understand how SPARK, what a year in our year in review, for 2022. So what our marketing team's been up to, what our entrepreneurial services team, what our business development team, we do awards. And then our keynote speaker is Dr. Santa Ono, president of the University of Michigan. So it's always a great opportunity for networking and getting to know, I think, a little bit more about what our organization does. So, and then the EDC's annual meeting will be November 9th at Crystal Gardens. So, and we're still putting together
and that's more of a focus on Livingston County.
Yep. I think we're kind of honed in on the homegrown successes.
All right.
And some development updates, but we also like giving out the awards too. So our project of the year, the Resilience Award, and then certainly because talent is so key in what we can do here in Livingston County, the Talent Partnership Award.
It's always a conversation to keep going. So awesome. I don't know, Dianne, do you have anything else that you want to add today?
No, I think we covered a lot. It's been great information. I just think it's really important to for our listeners to hear that and to know that outside of, they can always come to the chamber, but we have the resources to be able to direct them to whatever questions they have, no matter how small they may think they are, you definitely have a plan for that.
Right. I mean, every business matters.
Exactly.
Every business matters.
And if they have that question, other people have that question.
Yeah. And if, I have some businesses and they just need a contact at one of our local universities, and, we've got those relationships. I can pull from those greater relationships that we have within my industry into, whatever our businesses need. And so that's what I love doing.
Truly does take a village or a city.
Well, thank you so much, Marcia, for joining us today.
Yeah, this was great, guys.
We love having you on. We love having you in our community. And thank you for being a wonderful partner.
Appreciate it. Thanks.